physical and mental culture was being developed, and certain amount of soul discipline and soul training was there in the form and structure of some religion or other. Because the religious structure is the true structure of a real school. When once a religion is disrupted, or the people of one religion are polluted by commercial reasons and commercial civilization, there is no discipleship at all. A disciple is not a student, and a teacher is not a guru. Professors are different from gurus, and disciples are different from students of school or college or university. After all, whom we call professors are only employees who work for their bread and belly. The relationship between disciple and the guru is quite different. When you begin to teach your children something for some time every day, when you give the child a certain amount of independence, when you allow the child to do the work you are doing at home and take the child with you in social gatherings wherever you go, then you will understand what is traveling from you to the child in the form of the unfolding of the layers of consciousness. And then you will understand that what the student wants is not the smuggling of some information from books into the head of the student. It is only too brutal to push the information from all sides into the brains. That the student can do for himself very easily. And the methods we are using now for education are too beastly and too paleolithic. And after the student undergoes a graduation or post-graduation course, we can very easily understand it from his face, because we can find a psychic patient in his face very easily, with oppressed, depressed and loaded head. Education is removing the burden of the head and making the flower of personality unfold into its blossoming. And the process is from within outside and from not outside. You cannot make a flower blossom by pulling its petals. That is why we see many psychologues are most unpsychological, suffering from psychological diseases, at the same time yearning from patients that they will be able to cure the psychological diseases of others. Because let it be any subject, psychology or physiology or philosophy, we are only pulling the petals from outside to try to make it blossom. That is, we are trying to push information into the head, because we cannot make the boy discover for himself. We have forgotten the process of preparing a magnet with the help of a magnetized magnet. When pieces of iron are placed before us, and when we have no magnet with us, what is the use of attaching a label upon which the word magnet is printed on each of the iron piece? Nothing, no change will take place. Sometimes we may be harming the tender mechanism of the psychology of the children. The process is peculiar. Those whom we call masters, they are past masters in all the branches of the science of man. They know how to teach. They know the real teaching methods. The scriptures are an example of it, and we find very skillful methods of imparting wonderful knowledge, wonderful wisdom to try to make the layers blossom. For example, one teacher was teaching to his disciples how the positive creation takes place in the mind to make a construction on the physical plane in the evolution. How the creator mind in this universe makes the creation first on the mental plane and then makes it in the physical matter outside. The student could not understand it. Then the teacher gave an example. See how a potter prepares a pot. He takes the clay and makes it a pot. See how the sculptor makes a sculpture. You think that the sculpture is being chiseled, but the truth is This sculpture was there in his mind in all its detail. Before he could make it reflect on the stone, he removes the stone that is not necessary, and he never repairs a picture at all. He preserves that much of stone which makes the statue and removes the remaining part of stone. And the process is, he reveals the statue which was already there concealed in the stone. That is how the teacher explained. 9 students could understand, and the 10th one said, "Sir, I could not understand." Then he said, "We will have a practical class, you can understand." He said, "Now it is time for us to go to the river and take a bath, because we have to come home and eat." So they started for a bath. The Guru took the students to the bank of the river and called this 10th fellow and said, "My boy, I forgot to bring my pot to take water home. Please go home and bring the pot from my room." And he said, "Do you know my pot?" The student said, "I know it." The student went home and searched for the pot. In the meanwhile, the teacher and the other students took bath and finished everything. And the teacher said to the other disciples, "It takes a long time for the fellow to return, and in the meanwhile we will finish everything." Then the disciple returned after a long time with a pale face, and he said, "I could not find the pot." The teacher asked, "Have you searched properly?" The answer is, "Yes, sir." The teacher asked, "What for you have searched?" Student said, "For the pot." "Is it there in the room?" Question. The answer is, "It is not there in the room." Once again the question is, "What is it that you have searched for?" The answer is, "Your pot, sir." Then the teacher took his pot from his bag and asked him, "When the pot is with me here, how could you search for the pot? You know that there is no pot in the room, but how could you search for the pot?" Then the student said, "I have an idea of your pot." Then the teacher asked, "What is the shape of the idea of your pot?" The disciple said, "Exactly like the shape of your pot." Now do you understand that a pot exists in your mind which is different from the pot that exists here in my hand? Then student said, "Yes, I understand." Then the teacher said, "The sculptor had the picture in his mind just as you have the pot in your mind. And the sculptor had the sculpture outside just as I have this pot in my hand." Similarly, the creator consciousness has this creation in his mind. The creator consciousness has in his mind this creation long before it is created. And according to the creation he is having in his mind, he has worked out this creation on the physical level. This is what is called the creator. Then the student asked, "Is the creator God?" Then the teacher said, "The creator is not the God, just as you are not your mind. The creator is to God what your mind is to you." Then the student could understand a little bit more. We have thousands of such stories in the world scriptures. It is a pity that we do not find such stories in the modern teaching psychology textbooks or in the poor brains of the psychologists also. Because with due respects to the modern dimensions of psychology, I declare after 1,000 times once again that the modern psychology is a wonderful science of problems without solutions. It can give you the reason of any psychological problem. It can analyze wonderfully why you are not sleeping and immediately give you a paper with all the graphs and the mental vibrations. When you ask for a solution how to sleep, there is no single page as a direct answer or a solution in any one of the thousands and thousands of books of the psychologues. If you show a single solution, I will be your first disciple from today onwards. We are having a science called psychology, which is still Paleolithic in its nature. And the disciples and the masters know what psychology is. And from thousands of years in the past, till today, the real masters of wisdom are making the layers of consciousness of the disciples unfold in a systematic and artistic manner, so that there may not be any damage to the mental filaments of the disciple. And there was a time when the disciples were sent for some years to the teachers. Sometimes for 7 years or 10 years or 12 years. The disciples were asked to stay with the teachers and then return after many years. Now it is not possible under the present conditions because education has been miserably commercialized. Not that great intellectuals do not know the value of education today. There are great intellectuals among the modern educationalists having wonderful creative powers and good schemes. But the contribution of these great international educationalists is mercilessly crushed under the boots of commercialization. We find political fellows deciding the fate of education. Under these conditions, the masters have evolved a wonderful method of educating their disciples. You are asked to stay in your own position and a scheme is given to you so that you may follow for yourself and make your own experiments with your own profession in the office and psychological experiments with the persons in the domestic circle and social experiments with your friends circle and working out solutions for tough problems by tackling persons whom you call your enemies and by tackling yourself with the advantage of the presence of those whom you call enemies. Whenever we have enemies, the spiritual teachers take the advantage of it and they try to solve unsolvable psychological problems not to our enemies but to ourselves, because we are not pleased if the problems of our enemies are solved. We will be highly displeased and indignant if anyone solves the problems of our enemies. So the teachers take the advantage of the presence of our enemy and they will effect a cure upon us with a good medicine which we call enemy. One disciple approached his guru in India and said, I am in great difficulty. The teacher said, I know it. You have many enemies. Then the student said, you have wonderfully discovered my trouble. I am having many enemies in this world. Everyone is jealous of, and the teacher said, don't worry, let us kill all of them. Then the student asked, is it possible? The teacher said, it is possible through black magic. The disciple asked, do you know black magic? The teacher said, yes, therefore I am a spiritual teacher. Then he asked the disciple to make a list of the names and addresses of all the enemies and bring it to the teacher so that he may burn all the enemies. Then with great enthusiasm and zeal, the disciple had prepared a catalogue of enemies and the teacher examined it, asked, can you give me the addresses of these fellows? Then the disciple took one more week to gather all the addresses and he could succeed in giving a complete list. Then the teacher asked, can you give me the telephone numbers of these fellows? Then the fellow took one more week because he had to go around these enemies 3 times. That was what the teacher wanted. And then the list was finished, complete. Then the teacher asked, give me a priority list. Who are the immediate and dangerous enemies? So that we may practice black magic according to that order. And then he took one more night to make a priority list. And there was the red letter list. Then the teacher said, this is the first priority, the deadliest enemy. See, I will kill him first, but I want a photo of this fellow to exercise black magic. Then the student went to the studio and asked if he had the photograph of his enemy. The photographer said, he had his photo when he was married in my studio and I can give you a copy if you can pay 1,000 Swiss francs. Then he paid 1,000 Swiss francs from his business and purchased that photo and purchased a photo mount also, frame, made it ready and brought it to the Guru. Then the Guru said, I will tell you the mantra how to kill the enemy. Sit down here in lotus pose. Place the picture before you. Look at the face and close your eyes. Try to recollect the face of your enemy in your mind and see that the face is not distorted from your mind. Then the disciple began to practice, and within 1 week he could make his mind stable on the picture of the enemy. And then he came and asked, Sir, my mind is tranquil now, and it is not so very angry about my enemies as it was previously. I feel that the jealousy of my enemies has come down much, because the reason is his mind is tranquilized and his jealousy is diluted, and therefore he felt that the jealousy of his enemies is diluted. And at the end of 1 year, the teacher asked the student, still do you have any enemies? Still shall I try to play the black magic? Then the student smiled and said, Sir, don't make me a fool. It is all a past story and a nightmare. This is the way in which the teachers tackle their disciples. And they tackle personally during some centuries. Yeah. That is, the disciple has to stay with the teacher for some years. And after some time, when the disciple has no time to go to the teacher, when the civilized centuries occur on this earth, they establish peculiar contacts between disciples and themselves, and they use peculiar methods. You can stay at home, you can attend all your duties, and you will be developed in your spiritual path, and the lessons are systematically given to you. And your lessons include your duties at home, your duties to your wife and children, your father and mother and your brothers, your duties in the office, and your duties in the friends circle. Taking these departments as your laboratories, the teachers conduct psychological experiments upon you quite from a distance. It is enough if they send a program to you, because the program works with us as a seed to get germinated in the fertile land of your mind and grow into a full-grown tree, not only to expand, but also to bear flower and make the flower blossom and put forth the fruit, and again give the seed for dispersal, so that you may disperse the seed of thought to your disciples, just as your master has done it to you. That means the master never claims any masterhood, because his nature is only seedhood and not masterhood. He accepts you neither a disciple or himself as a master, because he knows that himself and yourself are disciples in an institute called the universe, and he is doing his duty towards you, and he is not angry if you are talking to the disciples of other gurus, or he is not jealous if you go and learn some hatha yoga from other yoga teacher, because he is not worried that his business will be disturbed when you go away from him. So a true guru and a disciple are different from whom we call gurus and disciples generally. We know how much we are angry when our student talks to another guru, because we hate it. We hate what we fear. That is the innate psychological truth of human nature. All the seeds of our fear will germinate into trees of intense hatred. So if my disciple is talking to Rudolph, I am very much afraid if Rudolph will kidnap my disciple, because Rudolph will advertise that he is a true teacher of yoga, and he warns everyone to beware of false teachers. This is what Rudolph does in Geneva, and this is what Krishnamacharya does in India. So that you may find literature criticizing Rudolph in India and literature criticizing Krishnamacharya in Geneva. This is the fate of the poor animals whom we call generally gurus. But real gurus are quite different. And Rudolph and Krishnamacharya has to develop a brotherhood to be the real disciples of a real guru. Real discipleship takes place in silence because the guru teaches in silence and the disciples learn in silence. Here silence does not mean vocal silence. Silence as an attitude. Silence from everything that is not needed so that the word of the guru is transmitted in the form of an attitude of life. It is thrown like a seed into our life through the holes of our mind, and the seed takes germination, and gradually a life is created from our life. Our already existing life is what we call mundane life. That is the individual life, trying to be different from every other fellow. From such a life, we will create a new life, and this is what is called a second birth in the Indian scriptures. It is also called the spiritual birth, and it is also called a rebirth into the spiritual world. It is what is called resurrection in its true sense when properly understood. Because once again a child is to be born in you, to the virgin nature in you. Then only the Christ comes down to earth. He will never come down with the agents of Christianity, but he comes down of his own accord, not because of the advertisers, but because of your heart. In every religion, we have this concept. It is said under a banyan tree, a boy sits down and explains in silence, and people who are grown up, they receive in silence. And those who receive, they are growing. The one who gives is sitting as a child eternally. This is the meditation given to the students by the teachers in India. Once again I repeat, because there is a great significance in the meditation. A child sits under a banyan